Hey, welcome to EVE 2020. This is the war update on July 11th. And Matterall here with Sully. How's it going, Sully?
Good. Happy to be here again.
Yeah. Also here with Killah Bee.
Hello.
And we'll probably expect Billy to come later in the show. All right, let's start with some basic stuff here. Looking at the PCU, I wanted to see if I was like getting bigger because of the war, but I see no evidence of that. It jumped up in May, but it's since has come back down to the high 30s. It got up to like 41, 42,000 concurrent players. Now back down. There is a big peak here though. That was probably when move ops were happening on, July 5th. That's probably people moving, so it got up to like 38,000. So I want that in the back of your mind to keep some perspective on what a war means to EVE Online. Definitely generates a lot of publicity. Does it generate a ton of players coming back that everybody talks about? Sure. But their peak concurrent usage isn't that big a difference.
Couldn't it also be offset by people lapsing some of their crabbing accounts and stuff like that, so it then levels out and becomes even?
All right, Caleb. Could. Yeah, I don't know. All right, so that's... shoot. So let me turn that on so you can see what I was looking at. There's PCU. You see the COVID bump, I guess. So people are staying home for a while, but that seems to have clearly gone away. This war is that spike right there that you could see at the end. That was 1 week ago, 38,000. So zoom in even further on that. There it is. See the spire. Okay. We're looking at overall campaign damage so far. We took this from FleetCom. You can see that early on, the very first day, probably I can't. It's day 0, which was 7 on July 4th. This is the day before the actual kickoff. This might account for the raid from the Imperium onto Paragon Sol, but at this point in the graph, let's see if I can bring that up. Get better. The very, very first day before Test and Legacy even got started, the Imperium did more damage to Legacy than Legacy did to the Imperium. That's the very first day. By the time we get into the second day, you can see Imperium lost 170 billion to, looks like 96 billion to Legacy. And Legacy and PanFam, those are the groupings. And then you can see basically that the Imperium is losing more money by a factor of, I don't know, basically sometimes double on this day here. This looks like Wednesday. But then it kind of pairs out. It starts to like get a lot more similar. And then on the last day or more recently, I don't know how accurate that last one is, but it's pretty much the same as far as damage. Let's look at the numbers a different way. Here's the campaign through EFM. You can see individually per alliance, like how many millions they are. That's millions per. I don't know if that's the amount of damage they're doing or amount of damage they're taking. I think this is what they're doing. So Pandemic Horde, 21 billion, it looks like. Read that.
What are you looking for?
Where are you guys coming from? You're just like filtering in. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at EFM here, and they have Team 2, which is basically the attackers in this case, Test Alliance, Pandemic Horde, Fraternity, and stuff, and they have like 13,000 million, which is probably
billion. So 122 billion and
Yeah. There must be a lot of small ships so far. And okay, so let's just go to the series of events. So what happened in the last week since the war kicked off? We'll go to our guest, Killah Bee. Maybe you could tell us what you remember so far, like each day, maybe what the theme of the day was, what the strategy has been so far. You there, Killah?
Yeah, in a second.
Sure. I mean, well, we'll look for a worksheet that I have that explains every day. Okay, well, Killah Bee is getting ready. Let's talk to Sully. Do you have that sheet open, Sully? And can you walk through the days with me?
Yeah, I have the sheet open.
So we have a little research team that we put together of guys that are on top of it. It's a timeline of events and stuff. Can we go through that?
Do you want to start at day 0 and I'll start day 1?
Yeah, all right. So day 0, we had, this would be July 4th, which was a Saturday. And basically had speeches that were given by people. We compiled them all into one day, but these may have been given a couple days before, like Fraternity, for instance, was a few days before. It's like on a Thursday or something. And I think Matani's was on a Saturday. And Tests and Legacies speech came on the 5th, actually a day after day 0. But we're all collecting them here as pre-war propaganda and narratives. So the speech by Matani was basically that Test is next and that the Bob grudge is over after 14 years. And that's what essentially the theme was. We're going after Test. Test is our target. They are going to pay for betraying us. ProGod did most of the talking for Legacy. And it was a speech that was given live. And so his was, the Imperium must go because they're bad for the game. There are too many blocks. The Dead Coalition has already been defeated and destroyed. So that's one block gone. And goons are next. So for the sake of the game, goons have to be destroyed. That's not a message, and we broke this down, it's not a message against one group against another. It's a message of unifying the server against Imperium tendencies. Not even Imperium, but Imperium tendencies. Okay, take us through the next part of that.
So, as with most invasions and assaults, there has to be systems where you base. So there was 2 keep stars anchored in FAT-6P catch. One of which was, once it finished anchored, was transferred to NC Dot, and the other one has been transferred to Test Alliance. These are the respective staging for those alliances and coalitions. For example, Legacy is mainly out of the Test Alliance, and Winter Co and Pandemic Horde are out of the NC Dot. Moving on from that, the next day, so day 1, pretty much just began a large-scale Intosis fight over Paragon Salt. It was just designed to kind of put them on the back foot, start having them defend timers as well as generate timers that you never know we may have been able to get through. I believe it was a day 1 that put the IHOB in reinforce that brave pilot in his lonely little ship managed to kill. It was just trying to find targets of opportunity, trying to find, as someone put earlier, a chink in the armor of the defense.
Right. That was July 5th, day 1.
Yeah, day 1. That's I say pretty much most days now do have a large amount of intosising going on,
Yeah.
but there's some key objectives that have been fought over.
Yeah, Killah Bee, are you able to talk yet?
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, talk about the intosising that's been going on. You mentioned that it's different than it used to be, and that was really surprising.
But I don't really want to go all over that again. So it was kind of a long rant, and I was just rambling all out of my thoughts. But I feel like everybody has a better grasp on how to do Entosis now than they had for previous wars, and the strategy changed. Where back in like 2016, 2017, usually what we did was we would try to headshot key staging systems, key I-hubs, key citadels, and then just roll over the space and do the Entosising uncontested. And now that has kind of changed, where the focus is very much shifted towards Entosising in the first couple of weeks, and kind of slowly chipping away I-hubs left and right, and then making progress that way. So that's one main aspect that changed. But this first week was like a pretty typical first week of a war. It's still a lot of people getting into places. It's still not at full swing. Test has a bunch of big move-ups coming up this weekend, or they're already done or in progress right now. I'm not entirely sure. We saw some skirmishes. We saw some bigger brawls. A couple IHUBs have died. A couple citadels. Yeah, but it's a pretty standard first week, I would say. There has not been any really major stuff going down. It's been skirmishes and stuff left and right so far. I think that we'll see some big stuff happening, in the next maybe 2-3 weeks. I think things are going to start picking up in terms of velocity and what actually happens. Also, a coalition like the ones that I'm involved in now, one of the biggest disadvantages we always have is the fact that we're kind of a mixed bunch of people. There's like, I don't know, at this point it's like 100 alliances or whatever that are all decided to want to fight the Imperium. So it's always kind of difficult to get the coordination down, make sure everybody's aware of the timers and knows the priorities. And sometimes that doesn't really work. Like earlier, there was an Aspel that was dropped in D4KU. Yeah, I heard that. And FRT kind of dropped it. FRT dropped it, I think, but nobody really was told about it. So it was kind of spaghetti. And those are the kind of things that happen during the first couple of weeks. But then hopefully when they get ironed out, then, things start to go a bit more smooth. And that's what we've been experiencing in this first week.
We saw that. We're like, does that guy not know that he's putting his business down in a war zone? Like that. Chinese guy, but if he was part of fraternity, then he did know miscommunication.
He does know. I think the Asbill went up, but it was. Actually, it's anchoring. Okay, so yeah, but I think we fed a bit over it. I think FRT fed a bunch of ships over it to make sure it goes anchoring. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay, cool. Let me move into the game to show the map. I think the story right now is almost like it's a story of bridges more than anything else. Like
it's all about combat logistics.
Oh, you're a bit loud. Say that one more time.
It's basically a game of combat logistics. Disrupting your enemy's combat logistics. The ability for them to get to where they need to get to fast and efficiently.
Well, that was true for me because I got killed by Carneros' group Bastion trying to get some war footage. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a talk with Carneros. But if you look on the northern campaign seems to be right now all about D4KU. And Killah Bee explained, I'll explain this so you don't have to, Killah Bee, but you can jump in if you want, that once you get that station, that allows you to penetrate into Fountain with a jump range with your ships. So that really will change the ball game as far as Fountain goes.
D4KU is kind of key. It gives us once we manage to establish a beachhead in the D4K, it will give us great dread range into basically all of Fountain.
Yeah. Am I mistaken, McLeod, since you're from Initiative, that wasn't Pando basically saying to move a bunch of stuff. Was he saying to move it out of Iridia and other places, or are they moving stuff from Fountain already?
They're removing non-essential assets from Fountain. There's been a lot of faction forts that were unanchored and stuff like that, but that's pretty standard as well.
Yeah, well, essentially, any non-combat assets are being, it's requested to kind of move them into safe locations. We're very much realists when it comes to, the fight in Fountain. That it's not entirely out, outside of reason that we're going to lose a lot of things in Fountain. So obviously getting non-essential stuff to safe locations, say NPC or low sec, is completely understandable. Like this isn't like a, oh crap, we forgot about this, let's quickly put the word out about it. Like this was literally before day 0, it was requested that we do this sort of thing. But even though we're moving assets, non-combat assets out, like this doesn't mean that we're not going to be fighting tooth and nail for every single system.
All right. So the other areas, because that's the northern front, and there seems to have been a lot of going back and forth there. Was there an iHub that was taken over in the north, or was that just in the south? There was two.
There was an iHub in ITEX C, I think it was.
Okay, so in the south, there's another bridge. The first thing that happened in this war was we saw Imperium go through period basis, which is down here. So they traveled from Delve south to period basis, and then they raided across to Paragon Sol, and they tore the place up, creating a bunch of timers. They didn't really capitalize on any of that. It was just kind of a raiding party. But the reverse happened on Tuesday. I think that was the TCAG 3 iHub attack, which was pretty interesting. Does anybody know about that one? If not, I have some.
TCAG.
Yeah. Some period basis down here. Well,
yeah, I think I was on a fleet that went down there from the initiative. We basically held a position that was kind of equidistant between the two kind of the two entry points into period basis as such. I don't know too much about it though.
Well, from what I read, this is more on Reddit, but it was a big attack by Legacy. It was a surprise attack, and they went after the iHub. They worked on the code. And initially, within the first few minutes of this battle, Legacy really kicked the crap out of Imperium, because they had, looks like, hacks and armor hacks and that kind of stuff that were, and destroyers, really tearing up the frigates and the interceptors that were there trying to defend. And for most of the battle, the Imperium was on the losing side of the Isk War. So the Imperium got to their feet and it was able to escalate to capital ships and essentially win the field. So Test crashed the gate and took off. We had some footage of that. You can see that, courtesy of Maniscar, who put that together.
Was that the capital escalation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we considered that the first proper capital escalation. I don't know what Legacy was flying. They usually fly Shield, right? So I don't know if they were in armor hacks. They were in hacks. So I guess...
I believe Legacy was flying Eagles and Munins.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, T2 cruiser type stuff is what I meant. And that was chewing up the T2 frigates that that Imperium seemed to have there. So it was natural, but the escalation did chase away Legacy, so Legacy took off. A good hard hit, didn't amount to much. A lot of destruction, and that was about it. So that was exciting, because that was one of the first fights, and that was on July 6th. Well, let's just take these in order real quick. July 7th, Fountain. This is where we go back up to the north. And there's a big showing. You guys put out a call to all your pilots to show up. Red Pen CTA or whatever you guys call it. You made everybody form. You formed big. It's pretty intimidating. You guys had supers, which NC and PL, I don't think they can overcome that just yet. Not at that scale anyway.
Well, the NCPL from Hophead at least have, they have brought in significant capital assets, not super capital assets, but definitely capital assets. Like, we know that they have, upwards of potentially 1,000 dreadnoughts alone, in that one station in Hophead. So, the potential devastation that they can potentially cause, it is not lost on Initiative and Initiative's FC team. So our utilization of and supers are obviously done in a very very cautious kind of way. But obviously, with that, we also sort of want the fights, and we also want to have the opportunity to essentially, remove those assets from usage as best we can.
Yeah. Okay.
But at this particular point, like when we can utilize super cap assets as a force multiplier and as a way of basically outforming or outgunning any opponents from Hophead, then that is what we probably intend to do. At least that's what it seems to be.
Okay. All right, Killah Bee.
Be right back, actually. Sorry.
All right, that's no problem. So I think because we've talked to Killah Bee throughout the week, and one of the things that he and Billy and others were pointing out was it was clearly they couldn't contest that iHub. You guys protected it, but at the same time, you guys had to basically use some political capital by putting down everybody shows up for this and nothing happened. And that's part of the warfare is the...
It was part of the warfare. It was also part of the, it's a classic show of force, which obviously boosts morale. To some degree, forming up supers and titans and all that kind of thing, and then leaving them in the dry dock anyway. Sometimes kind of gets, sometimes is a bit of a morale breaker, I guess. Like, that's probably one of the reasons why you saw us like, jump in every single person, like our capital fleet and our super fleet. So, there was that, obviously, but that Wednesday was very much a case of that was the day to reset everything that, or pretty much reset everything that. PanFam had basically been trying to achieve over the, first part of the week. So it was pretty essential to do.
Yeah. So Gatlos here says, we jumped in because of a Sino jammer. What do you think he's referring to? It was something that happened where. Oh, it was
Well, that whole pocket is Sino jammed. Like the jammers only come down when we particularly want it. Like that's one of the things about these new Sino jammers as opposed to the old Sino jammers is they don't have like a
half hour.
They don't have a half hour kind of like offlining kind of timer. You literally just turn it off like straight like that, so you can kind of turn it off and jump your guys in, then turn it back on. It's only like I can't remember how long it takes actually online, but it's not that long. So the capacity for you to kind of essentially dictate when when capital assets can jump into a system is it's very formidable in that regard.
Well, so the way that it worked is that you could take down a Sino jammer. Now, a Sino jammer keeps the big ships out of your system. So if it's jammed up, you got to go in there with subcapital ships, destroy the jammer, opening that system up to big ships dropping into it. And
Yeah,
that used to be that it took a half. If you had a Sino jammer up and you wanted your guys to pass through, well, you could take it down, but it was for a period of time. It was for a half hour that thing was down, and anybody could jump in at that point. So you had to be very strategic about when you took a Sino jammer down. That's the way it used to be. So now that time period is a lot more. It's a lot tighter. I think it's 5 minutes.
Shorter. Yeah. McDare in chat saying 5 minutes, and
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, that's a massive difference in comparison to your ability, your window to be able to firstly execute into a system, and secondly, if you weren't expecting that to happen, 5 minutes is extremely quick to put together a fleet, a capital fleet, and get them out of dock and into system.
All right. So day 4, July 8th. Sully, can you read there what happened?
So yes, there was Intosis timers coming out throughout Fountain, as well as a jump bridge timer in D4. That was reinforced. I believe it was reinforced by Pandemic Legion. I may be mistaken on that. And again, Supers and Titans were brought on field. I believe we had a stream up with them on. And yeah, it was a formidable 200 plus Titan force.
Yeah, let's see if I can show what we were looking at there, because it was really just kind of a show of force. You saw all the Titans come out of the initiative. Who was there, McLeod? Was that initiative and more, or was that just initiative in there?
That was the initiatives family of alliances. So basically, we have initiative mercenaries, and initiative associates. A lot of people don't quite understand the relationship between those three. Essentially, in the same way that PL used to have a feeder corp for alliances coming, or corporations coming into their alliance would go into a secondary alliance before going into the main alliance. This is essentially what Initiative Mercenaries is. And Initiative Associates is essentially our renter group, who, for whatever reason, enjoys fighting. Certain aspects, certain people in that particular group do enjoy fighting alongside. And who are we to stop them?
I can confirm I was an initiative associate.
Hey.
And there's nothing as fun as flying sabers for a bigger group who, although we weren't able to get in fleets when I was there, it's still nice to be useful in a small capacity.
Yeah, so you're seeing here some of the footage that Sully and I were sitting on comms talking about what we were seeing, describing what was going on. This was the show of force by the initiative and all their ships.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
But Killah Bee is having some internet issues. We may not be able to keep him on. So, okay, we'll...
Well, I like him. Unlike me, he's a very busy kind of man. Like when it comes to coordinating fleets and stratagems in Eve. So I'm just a line member as such. I'm more of a line member even than Brisk. Like Brisk has his CSM duties, obviously.
All right, cool.
I do not.
All right, so day 5, July 9th. Now here's where 2 iHubs get destroyed, which I think was unexpected, but also not necessarily consequential for the Imperium. This is only the beginning, but the iHubs are important. This is where these are the things that people are fighting over. The structures are not necessarily what people are fighting over. So they're fighting over jammers to get into a system, but their intent once they get into the system is to destroy the infrastructure hub, because that lowers the defense rating of the system, making the system easier to conquer. It makes the system easier to conquer. It makes the structures in the system easier to conquer. So
It also widens the vulnerability window that they are vulnerable to being basically attacked and stuff like that. So
yeah.
iHubs have three main functions when it comes to a defensive state. When they are in a system with a TCU for a long period of time, the strategic index is raised. That means for an attacker to a structure, it takes a lot longer for that anchor to finish, as can be seen with D4 Asbel. Normally, structures take 24 hours. That has 5.5 days of anchor time. So it's a lot easier for the defending side to plan an attack to destroy that structure, which I'm sure Initiative family are currently doing.
Yeah.
Also, it makes it so there are no upgrades in that system anymore. So to deploy a jump gate, Sino Beacon, and Sino Jammer, you need the system to have a certain upgrade installed in the iHub. Without the iHub being there, there is now no longer a jump gate that will work to that system. You cannot jam the system. It is vulnerable in that sense.
So the first one we want to look at is right here in a period basis is XZSKZ, and I'm looking at it, and it is this one here that is right on the other side of Stain. So it's an entrance point, very high up in the northern part of period basis, which puts them really a few jumps away from Delve proper, which is right there. So I think that can be considered a pretty needed system. I think all these bridge systems are going to be, not bridge, but I call them bridge because they bridge regions. But yeah, those are going to be important. Here it is right here. So I don't know if that's an important capture yet. I think it's a surprisingly good capture, but it's not necessarily the main gates. The main gates that we're looking at are down here. TCAG is a main gate. That's a big issue for capturing. And of course, the biggest of them all right now is D4KU in the north. That is a critical entry point that will essentially lead to the fate of Fountain. But down here, attacking Delve is not going to happen directly. There was some thought that it would go through Quarius, which is right here. It's a neighboring system. That is not what appears to be happening. Instead, they're coming through period basis, or they're trying to come through period basis. So they did get one iHub in. So the other iHub, let's see, is ITech CU.
That's Southern Fountain.
It's right here. Is that a strategic system, as far as you know?
It's a system that can prove to be a bit of an awkward kind of situation for us to deal with. I'm not entirely certain whether it is. Let me just double check to see how far the jump range is. It is not actually within jump range of Hop-Hib, so they, it
would need to create some other midpoint.
Yeah, you need to have another midpoint somewhere in there to get to ITech C. So the ability for any of PanFam to be able to utilize that break in the jammer sort of in the jammers to drop in capital ships to reinforce their any forces that are fighting in there are kind of not really possible as far as I can tell.
Okay. Well, so they did pick up a couple of iHubs. One in. You're so loud. Are you talking right into your mic?
Sorry, my bad. I just wanted to actually correct myself. Super caps, no, but regular capitals, yes. So that's
dreads, which is
so
what you would worry about.
They can drop dreads and carriers in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
sorry, that's my bad.
That
right, is a big issue.
Yeah, you don't want to get a dread bomb into the heart of Fountain because then you give them the ability to operate in that area, and so they can chew it up from the inside. But they're they're attacking the main gates, and they're also looking at some side entrances. Looks like they captured an iHub in that. And that doesn't mean they have the system. It just means they've weakened it to the point where it could be taken over. It could also be taken back because Fountain belongs to an impressive group of, or an impressive power base of the initiative. Okay, so that was basically Thursday. So July 9th, Thursday, that was day 5 of the war. We saw some iHubs fall. Some pretty important ones, entry points into regions. One in period basis and one in Fountain. Day 6, July 10th. That was yesterday. Sully, did we see anything there?
So in Catch, Goons had one system. Goons from Federation had one system in Catch, which was 4-07MU. It seemed that at the time this was just when this and the NIP was put in place, they just had that system. I'm not quite sure the strategic value of it. I think it was more so because it's such a big gate. It's their early warning kind of thing. But both the TCU and iHub were destroyed and replaced with legacy TCU and iHub. So that is the last Goon system in Catch. So now Goons will have no SOV presence there. It's on the way fighting from the legacy staging into Quirius. I don't know if there's any plans for moving forward. I'm not involved in any of them, if there is any, but I think that was more of a clearing up. There was an engagement on the other side of the Stargate into Quirius. However, it ended with a small capital brawl. Goonswarm did escalate capitals, and Legacy had their own capitals ready to jump in, but because of the distance between that Smuggler's Gate, Goonswarm didn't commit their capitals through the Stargate, and neither did Legacy. So it was mainly a small sub-capital brawl, but that was the end of the 4-0 SOV for Goons. Also on July 10th, we had another timer in D4. This
D4,
one was
yeah.
the Initiative Fortizar exiting its shield timer. Initiative brought a decent-sized Zealot fleet with carrier and fact support that immediately tethered onto the Fortizar. The carriers did bounce around a little bit, but there was no major skirmish. There was a impressive fighter ball on the gate, as well as obviously the Zealot fleet, around about 400 in local. There was no attack from Winterco, Panfam, or anyone like that. It was initiative defense.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I had to put my feet there real quick.
Are you fleet commanding from here?
Well, no, yeah, I mean, I was at the start, but then I had to hop on another Discord, so that's why I left then.
All right, well, we've covered the week, and I just want to say it looks to me like if you needed to take away one takeaway from this is that right now people are fighting for those long jumps between regions like that. Those, I call those the bridges. It's not a great name because we have bridges inside the game, but these are regional bridges that people are fighting for. They're fighting for it in the north, and they're fighting for it in the south. Or so, yeah. So, and then they, yeah. Okay.
Geographically advantageous locations.
Right. So that's what's happening in this first week of the war. People are still arriving. Keep stars are being dropped on the attacking side. The defensive side went on a rampage over here in Paragon Sol. Short-lived, nothing really came of it. And now they've been defending systems that hold these bridges to hold out the invaders. That's the takeaway for the first week. Killah Bee, you've been involved in all this. Just give us whatever you want, whatever impressions you want to give.
Like it, I love it. I would go as far as say that. Is this stuff going on 24/7? There's always, especially being deployed with Horde is so much fun because Horde is such a big pile of people that want to do stuff. They're basically out doing stuff 24/7. They're shooting random Sino jammers, shooting jump gates, like just because they're bored and they want to do stuff, and then that results in some kind of content, you know. And there's like random people in NC I've never heard of flying around in Phoenixes through Fountain, and I get really mad. these kind of things. It's just great. Everybody's kind of logged in playing, and there's plenty of opportunities for content. And yeah, I love it. Like I said, I think next week's things are going to pick up even more, and I hope that we'll get some of the first bigger clashes soon. And yeah, it's great so far.
Yeah, let's see if anybody has questions for Killah Bee. Go ahead and type them in. And I'll read them. How are you? Are you happy with? Sorry, go ahead.
As I say, just quickly, Camo did also mention there was another skirmish where Initiative did use Titans and were lancing Moonin fleets. I believe there may have been a lance that was also pointed at a friendly fleet from Initiative.
I have to say that I was in that fleet, and I was also in the capital fleet as well. That was interesting. That was a close call.
Unfortunately, I can't speak too much about the fight because I died on the way there to some very formidable gate camps. I died 3 times on the way there.
I died too.
French Connection?
Bastion.
One was French Connection, one was an Initiative Smart Bomb, and the other one was Bastion Gang. Each time catching my sub 2 second interceptor, so very impressed with them.
Sub 2 second interceptor is an interceptor that can go from 0 to warp in less than 2 seconds. That means somebody has to apply electronic warfare and disable its engines within 2 seconds. That's a very hard thing to do. But I think it was Killah Bee that explained to us how it's done, that it is possible. And now Carneros' group has mastered it. Now, I don't know if he took the information from Talking in Station's show and took it back to his guys. Gonna have a talking to if he did. But those guys are vicious now. Bastion picked me off quickly. I was an interceptor. Although I was in a little bit of a bad fit, so I deserved to get destroyed. But they can pick you off in less than 2 seconds. You're in real trouble trying to get a camera through there. We're trying to like stream fights and stuff, but it's hard to get in there. We're blue to nobody, so everybody can attack us. Okay, so here's a question for Killah Bee. Does Killah feel like the proper progress is being made by PanFam in Fountain, or is it sort of a 1 step forward, 2 steps back type thing?
Bias. No, I'm pretty happy with what we're doing. So, like I said, the first week is mostly about testing waters, seeing what responses we get from doing what stuff. So, say, what happens if we hit a fort? What happens if we hit a faction fort? What happens if we hit a jump gate? That kind of thing. I want to see what kind of responses we can expect from both Init and Goons, because Goons are all, that far away as well. Like yesterday, they showed up with 3-4 fleets or something. So I'm really happy with, we managed to kill my IHUBs, although those were not really important IHUBs. But, at the end of the day, it's IHUBs. It's fine. We like to kill those anyways. We now kind of know pretty well what we can expect from Init in terms of numbers, what they can form, and we know better what we can form as well. So I think we can start making even more progress in the upcoming weeks. But overall, yeah, I'm pretty happy with what we've been doing so far. One thing to keep in mind as well is this is very much a two-front war. So for example, yesterday did not go very well for us at all. Like, I was not happy with the result of that fleet over those IHUBs yesterday. But while we kind of failed on our side in Fountain, we always have that that upside that when Goons are tied up in Fountain, we know that Legacy and Test have a pretty free reign over reinforcing stuff in Quarius and pure bases. So it's always a kind of a twofold thing, which is why it's really hard for us to make step backwards at the moment. To be honest, yeah, that's my opinion.
All right, so for the new guy in there, I don't see any other questions for Killah Bee. Oh yeah, there's one here from Nick. Nick asks, any thoughts on Graph being in Goons now? It's Graph Telk.
Yeah, see, the problem with that is, like, I like Graph, he's a cool dude, but he doesn't matter. And that sounds like that's a mean thing to say, but it's not like Laz coming back and actually maybe running fleets, because Graph doesn't run fleets. Graph's time of being an Intermaster, Spy Master are long gone. So it's a nice thing to post on Reddit. It looks good. It's cool for Twitter, but it's not going to change anything.
So strategically, he's not a huge asset.
No.
But
not anymore. He
but you
used to be
said,
back in the day, but right now he's not.
yeah. And Laz, for instance, is somebody that could FC.
He could be. Yeah.
He could be if he gets back into FCing shape.
If he no, I mean, I'm sure he's going to be in shape very quickly, but he just needs to actually run fleets.
And what about Elo Knight being there?
Same thing. Like, it could be a big deal if he does run fleets regularly, and it also depends on his stamina. It doesn't matter. Like, if he runs fleets for 1 week every night and then he disappears again, not gonna matter, right? If either of them, Laz or Elo, stick around through this entire war, then it's gonna make things harder. Yes.
So to put this in perspective, people don't know these names of Laz or Grath or Elo Knight. It is like war has come to Camelot, let's say, and the Imperium is Camelot. It's a castle with its own set of knights and soldiers and everything else. And what you have with these guys coming back is Elo Knight would be like, or Laz would be like Lancelot, a hero, somebody that people would rally behind, coming back to the castle to help defend it. And Elo Knight would be like a hero that never belonged to that culture, but he's a renowned warrior, and he's coming to work on their behalf. These are important figures for morale, but they're also incredibly impressive strategic figures as well. And they're great fleet commanders, so they can make a difference. And Grath is a very popular person inside of EVE Online, but I don't think he was ever a fleet commander as much as he was a spy master. But spy mastering takes constant care, working sources, being someone that people know, is involved. So if you haven't been involved in years, that decays, and you're not able to use the spy mastering techniques of figuring out what the opponent's going to do before they do it very well. So it's more of it's nice to see Grath on that side of things. Now, we're going to see Grath tomorrow on Talking in Stations proper. We're also going to see Sir Lancelot, Laz himself, tomorrow too on Talking in Stations at the same time, 1600. We'll also see Headliner, who is the head of Pandemic Legion at this time. So that's who we'll see tomorrow on Talking in Stations. But
I would also...
Yeah.
Sorry, I would also say that Pando did do his one of his FC chats and had Laz and Kendar actually on it. And we are going to be putting that up, obviously up on podcast service. So that should be coming up, should be put on and going to your respective podcast kind of syndication spots like sometime today.
Yeah. So that is, you will find more about Grath, who's actually in the audience now, and Headliner and Laz tomorrow on Talking in Stations. So you can catch Laz and Kendar, another one of those figures who's a pivotal FC. I think he said he was coming back. He said he wanted to fight Test. He used to belong to Goon Swarm, but he left on his own accord before any of this stuff happened. So it doesn't, and when we interviewed his CEO, he said that Kendar actually kind of walked that back. So we don't really know where he stands, where he's going to play a role, if he plays a role. Okay, so those are those guys, and that's why that's interesting. Somebody else had any other questions for Killah Bee besides Grath? Because I can't read his question out loud, probably. All right. So there was something here by Game for Bog. I don't know if he's a serious person or not, but he's like, I'm new. What's this whole war thing mean? Like he's having trouble conceptualizing it from the very beginning. Sully, do you want to conceptualize the scale of this war and what it means to go to war in EVE Online?
So it's hard to grasp the scale if you're a new player because it'll be difficult for you to get an understanding of EVE as a whole. But as someone else summed it up in chat, it is about 95% of Null Sec pilots going to war with each other in varying forms, with the Initiative Family and Imperium being on the, I believe on the tally they are slightly below they are, but it is not by a lot. So it is the largest war to date, I believe, in EVE Online history in terms of pure player base as well as capital force. And like many people have said before me, it will reshape the sovereignty map. The influence map will get quite vastly changed, I feel. One way or the other, there will be a massive change up.
Killah Bee, do you have any idea, any concepts to give on how big this war is, maybe in comparison to other games or other?
There's barely any other games that have proper wars. You know, there's games like Albion Online where you have wars. There's games like BDO, Black Desert Online, where you have wars. Then I'm sure there's some absolute niche no-name games that nobody knows about. But the biggest other sandbox games I know where there's actual like stuff, so to say, and wars in that sense is Albion Online and Black Desert Online. And obviously EVE, you know, makes those look small, but they're also different games. They're fantasy kind of MMO games, so they're on a completely different scale to begin with. So yeah, I mean, it's cool, but so far we don't know how big this war. Like, it has the potential to be a very big war just by the sheer amount of people involved and, you know, who's fighting who. But it's very hard to predict how things are actually gonna move, and if it, you know, the problem is as well that like people got so, because, you know, remember back like, and this may be something because of the Reddit mods, but like 3 years ago, or even longer than that, you would see like battle reports of small battles all the way up to large battles on Reddit every day. Nowadays, to get a battle report on Reddit, there has to be some massive 500 dreads dying, dread bomb, whatever, right? I feel like now the only way to get people's attention now would be to get another huge Titan fight, which, you know, it's impossible to say if it's gonna happen or not. You know, I don't know. So, but yeah, I mean, just the sheer amount of people involved, it's already a very big war, and it's likely going to become one of the bigger wars in the history of EVE.
Yeah,
I don't know. I always find it a bit weird and cringy. Like whenever people start, what I hate the most is when people start comparing EVE is to real money.
Money, yeah.
It's just,
gonna say that.
It's just such a weird. Like I understand why it's being done because it's great for a headline, and you know you can put some perspective on it. But it is wrong. Like it's just not true that a Titan is $2,000 or something, right? Like whatever the number is nowadays with the current value of Titans, you can't equate that. You can possibly just say like a Titan equals that amount of dollars or money. That just makes no sense, because for me, getting the money to buy a Titan is a quarter of the effort to get the money to buy a Titan. I would never even buy a Titan with real money. Like the idea behind it, why would I ever spend that much money on an in-game asset? You know, that's why I find it so weird when people say, "Oh, look, a Titan is worth $500 or something."
It could be from your perspective because you're young and you have time, less money, more time, and then when you get older, it switches. You have more money, less time.
Yeah, but even then, like I'm at a position now where I make plenty of, like, where I'm good on money in terms of in real life. I'm not a student anymore, and I landed a pretty lucky job. So it's changed. I understand, like, theoretically, to make the money to buy a Titan, it would be like 10, 15 hours of work or something, right? I don't have no idea what the real life money of a Titan is, but let's say a Titan is worth $500, right? Then it would probably be like 15 hours of work or 20, right? But still, like, to me, I would never. I just don't I don't buy in-game assets with real money. I just don't do that. I haven't done that in a very long. I did that right at the beginning when I started playing the game, because back then I had no ISK. But ever since like 2015, I have never ever since 2015, I have not paid a single month with real money of game time. I have not bought a ship or anything. I have not ever spent a single penny to CCP. Right, so that's why it's so far away from me now. So why I always have a hard time comparing that.
I got you. I think that things are compared that way in order to give something relatable to someone who doesn't know about the game. But we want to just tell you that this kind of a war only comes around every 5 years. or so. It takes a long time for the pressures to build up. It happened in 2008, it happened in 2014, it's happening in 2018, and this one is kind of a continuation of that. It's this is kind of the end times fight as far as I'm concerned, because what will come next won't look like what came before. So this is a map shaping, behavioral shaping fight that will completely change the way nullsec behaves, I think, in the future, if it goes according to what we think is going to happen, because all the motivation is there, all the assets are there as well. So I think that this is going to be the biggest war of your EVE lifetime. Put it that way. No joke. And I think I like the way that Naro said it from Fraternity in his State of the Alliance. I'll pull that up here in a second. Where he wrote, right here. And he said it pretty well. Right there. He says, I'll put this in there for you guys too, so you can look it up on your own. But he says, we're in the era of the three kingdoms. That's a reference to China, where three kingdoms consolidated power, and there was a balance of the three of them, and then they went to war with one another. It's a very famous book, I think, from their history. He says, we're in the era of the three kingdoms. When the strongest one falls, the balance will reshape. So I think that's pretty important, and I think that's accurate. This is a big, big, big deal. Again, you won't see, or you haven't seen a war like this. Well, you haven't seen it in four years, but you've seen a war a big war happen in 2018, which is not that long ago. I think there was a little bit of unfinished business during that war. But this one you haven't seen, I think, maybe 10 years, 2008, 2009. So it's huge, huge, huge. And I think one last thing I'll say on this, you can tell that it's beyond the scope of the normal 10 years that we've seen, and goes all the way back to the core of EVE Online when it was probably at becoming its most popular. That there was a grudge between this fledgling little group, Goon Swarm, against this mighty band of brothers, Bob, they called it. That was a grudge war, and that went on for a long time. And to see the leader of Goon Swarm say, we don't really care about that grudge anymore. We've already survived it and beat them several times in different ways, and etc. We have a new grudge. That's a big deal. He's turning the page on a lot of EVE history to say that, they're all about this war and this place. And who they are fighting is their old ally that really helped them have security. So Test and the Imperium for a while, or the Legacy Coalition that Test runs, and the Imperium, which Goonswarm runs, they were friendly for a while. They won 2018. They won those wars. But now this is breaking up into the three kingdoms, and we'll see, what happens after that. All right. That's all that we have. Killah Bee, do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, not really. I think we should just, look forward to what's happening next, and I think we'll have great shows coming up because there's going to be plenty of stuff to talk about, right?
Definitely. Super excited. You know what I like most about this? I don't know how it ends.
And no one does at this stage. That's the beauty of it. It could end in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, there's either a massive collision of a massive amount of force in this game that's been built up over years. There might be some secret name of a person we don't know yet that somehow, through subterfuge, destroys one side or one part of a side. There is a famous traitor to be made coming up. Who knows what's going to happen here? This story is exciting because we don't know how it ends.
Yeah, I'll be willing to bet Isk that when this war began, a large number of groups started to check who has access to turn things over to the enemy side.
Oh, they cleaned out their vulnerabilities, right? All right, let's have a little raid here. Yeah, Ron's on. We'll take you to Ron. He'll show you more about the war. He is from Legacy. He also was a part of Talking in Stations, doing his own thing now. And keep reading wherever you can about EVE Online. Stay tuned, because this war is only starting. It's 1 week old, and it's going to go for weeks and weeks. We'll see how it goes. Thanks, Killah Bee. Thanks, McLeod. Thanks, Sully, for hanging out with me, and thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for Ron. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.